morning, everyone. My name is Jimena Contrabañados. I am the Executive Director of the Interdisciplinary Public Policy Center of the Republic of Chile, together with Eurosocial, have organized this market of innovation and social cohesion initiative of the social policy area of Eurosocial program, together with the Interdisciplinary Center of the University of Chile, which is trying to increase the incidence of university in the design and implementation of public policies with a strong social and ethical component. Eurosocial is a cooperation program from the EU with Latin America, promoting public policies to reduce inequality and improve social cohesion in Latin American countries and in the region as a whole. Eurosocial is implemented by a consortium of institutions which make up the international Italo-American organization, ILA, as the responsible for this event, and International Foundation for Latin America, FIAP, Expertise France, and the Secretariat for Social Integration from Central America, CISCA. On behalf of all of them, again, we welcome you all. The Innovation and Social Cohesion Plaza and transition in global transition is a digital space which has different resources such as a seminar, a site, conversations with young people, interviews with experts, specialist publications, and other inputs in three specific environments: ecological transition, transformation of the world of labor, and the development of care societies. And in this context, we are opening the seminar that we have entitled Care as a Fourth Pillar of Social Welfare Systems, Euro-Latin American Dialogue or Discussion around the Challenges for Progress. The second of this cycle, we were recently in Chile thinking and discussing about eco-social transition, and on April the 26th we will be in San Jose, Costa Rica, approaching the challenges in the world of labor. So having said this, I would like to greet the authorities that are with us today here. Firstly, Mr. Pablo Tetamanti. He is the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. He is the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Worship of Argentina. Mr. Amador Sanchez Rico, who is the Ambassador of the European Union in Argentina. Mrs. Maria Cristina Perceval, who is the Secretary for the Equality and Diversity Policies of the Women, Gender and Diversity Ministry of Argentina. Celina Lescano, the Minister of Women in Paraguay. Francisco Delgado Jimenez, the Vice Minister of Human Development and Social Inclusion from Costa Rica. Lucia Sirmi Obon, who is the Undersecretary of Equality Policies of the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity of Argentina. And we also welcome the public officials, union leaders, business people, academicians, students, and the team of the Eurosocial program, and all those who are today connected through the digital platforms of Eurosocial Plus and the digital channel of University in Chile from different parts of the world. I would like to now give the floor to the authorities who will open this meeting. Firstly, to Mr. Pablo Tetamandi, who is the Vice Minister and Secretary for Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship of Argentina. Please, sir, take the floor. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The International Seminar on Care as the Fourth Pillar of Social Welfare Systems along this day will give us a framework to exchange ideas and experience on subjects which have acquired great relevance both nationally and internationally. I would like to thank the Minister of the Gender and for the delegation of the Europeans for having invited me to open this meeting. Care has to do with the welfare of people, everyday welfare, and promotion and strengthening is therefore a priority for the Argentine government. And if this reality does not generate the necessary awareness, the advent of COVID-19 pandemic just brought this to the front of mind. It made the importance of care and also showed the lack of fairness of the distribution. And these are the cares are factors of production and reproduction of social inequalities, in particular gender inequalities. And the pandemic also visibilized the regulatory vacuum that exists because existing laws and standards are unclear without establishing a general right of taking care and of caring for people, leaving matters free to the forces of the market, which affect the quality of life that we all aspire to. So one of our priorities is to guarantee a more fair network of care, and it is important to visibilize the work of care through policies that will involve all the parties that are involved in Argentina, the public sector, private sector, social organizations, and families themselves. So for this purpose, and the opening of the Congress sessions this year, the President established a standard that will create the necessary work for the millions of people who take care of other people. And there's also an initiative that tries to consolidate the agenda of care in the global environment and regionally. The care will be the subject of the next regional conference in Latin America and Caribbean, which will take place in November in Buenos Aires. So to make progress in this matter, we have the cooperation of the EU through Eurosocial program in its different phases and accompanying the different stages of national policies, and also to support care programs. In 2020, we organized the first discussion panel that had the participation of many national institutions that today participate in the program. This joint work was essential to focus on more results that have more impact and promote synergies to potentiate the cooperation as an effective contribution to development. In the context, we need cooperation and financing modalities that are more diversified, that take care of the different challenges faced by each country, which was compounded by COVID-19, which had to do with this, and it is essential to promote financing through sustainable and inclusive mechanisms, and the international community should find innovative ways of methods that will contribute to North-South communication and support. And we hope that this will help mid-income countries. So I am convinced that these meetings contribute to this, to develop the care as a fourth pillar of the social benefits. I would like to repeat my gratitude to the organizers of this seminar and also the national institutions and foreign guests for their contribution to everyday work and for their contribution to the work we do from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I thank the Ministry of Affairs and the representative of the EU for their constant support and as an essential ally in international cooperation, and I wish you the best of success during this seminar. Thank you.
We thank the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, for his words, Pablo Tetamanti. And now we will greet Amador Sanchez Rico, Ambassador of the EU in Argentina. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Dear Vice Minister, thank you for opening the doors of your palace to us, this fabulous building. And Secretary of Equality of the Ministry of Women, authorities of Latin America and of the Caribbean, present here today, either in presence or virtually, remotely. I am going to skip all the names in order to be briefer because I have 2 pages of gratitude for all of you. So don't feel badly if I don't mention you, authorities and members of the interministerial table and the rapporteur of Argentina. It is a pleasure to open this seminar fostered by the areas of social policies of Eurosocial program. As you all know, Eurosocial, as was said before, is a program which is a referent, a symbol program of the cooperation of the EU that for more than 15 years now has been working together with Latin America in the promotion of cohesion, social cohesion. Eurosocial is arriving at its end of the third cycle. Within this framework, the colleagues of ILA have suggested organizing this excellent innovation and social cohesion meeting around 3 seminars. I'm very happy that they have selected here Argentina, Buenos Aires, for it to be the place for this second encounter. Today in Buenos Aires, and for those that are following us, we are going to talk about the care system as a response to the deep transformations, demographic and social transformations we are going through. The aim is to generate a space for dialogue and reflection amongst different political players of different Latin American countries about the importance for the exercising of the rights and sustainability of care as a fourth pillar, integrated pillar for social welfare. Our societies want to professionalize care in order to have better care or quality of care and good care for vulnerable groups, traditionally marginalized. We can include people with disability there. To conceive care as a fourth integrated pillar is to conceive growth of the demand and expansion of these services as an important source of job generation. But we know that the dimension of care helps us strengthen social cohesion. And there is another dimension from which we can achieve gender equality. During the last 2 years, we have seen how in Latin America we've been consolidating the will to generate policies for care and implement integrated systems. That was mentioned before. Within this context, through Eurosocial, we received this demand and we started different lines of work that have become more relevant today. Both the European Union and in Latin America, the crisis caused by COVID-19 has put attention on the care systems and exposed its vulnerabilities. The lockdown and the new normality have made us know that all the people depend on care systems. Even though we've experienced in the first person its vital contribution to society, the policies of care are mainly a pending topic. On the other hand, the work towards care is quite undervalued. COVID makes us aware of this. The correlation between the burden in care that women have to go through, the lack of responsibility assumed by men, and the insufficient public alternatives in order to provide care. And people end up by becoming dependent. Today, we know that we have to bet on these type of new policies because that's where we will find opportunities to move forwards towards to gender equality and to pull down barriers that foster inequalities. In the European Union, we have laid emphasis on this by launching the next generation of the EU, which is a plan implemented to favor recovery. It is an unprecedented plan in order to favor recovery of the crisis caused by the pandemics and connected with the development in order to achieve green and digital transitions. This plan states that the EU members need to invest in care policies for the development of more resilient societies, better prepared to face crises, and highly committed to job creation. And as I said before, towards gender equality. The inclusion of this topic in the political agenda implies articulating efforts from the state, the market, and communities by achieving comprehensive care systems framed in social assistance. In Argentina, we are going to try to develop systems promoting autonomy and care for people that need support to perform activities in their daily lives. The complexity of these operations is high and finance is key. I hope this seminar will help us delve into these aspects. Eurosocial program has helped Latin America in all the challenges related to design and development of care policies. This is why in social innovation and cohesion topics, we couldn't neglect this topic. Eurosocial has presented its work during the last 5 years and is suggesting think about these social policies. We may highlight the initiative together with the IDB and the French Agency for Development, through which we've supported the regional network on care, like Cuidar Network. We want yesterday to have been one of the best meetings for this network to become a space for reference and reflection for the whole region. Going back to today's agenda, you will have the opportunity to participate in the dialogue with experts, political decision makers, and different players of society about the challenges for the construction of comprehensive systems of care in Latin America. We hope this seminar fulfills your expectations. Thank you very much for your attention. Congratulations, and my best wishes for this session to be a good one. Thank you. Thank you very much. We thank the Ambassador of the European Union for his words, and I'm leaving you with Maria Cristina Percival, Secretary of Equality and Gender Policy from the Ministry of Gender, Women of Argentina.
Good morning from this rain that brings us new happiness, which is to know that this is going to stop at some point. This beautifully and lovingly activity organized by those representing the sponsoring meetings is celebrated by us from the Ministry of the Women, Genders and Biodiversity Ministry, especially for Eurosocial, SEEP, and also grateful to be welcome to work in coordination and in agreement with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in particular this morning with the Vice Minister, Ambassador Pablo Tentamania. Welcome distinguished ambassador of the EU in Argentina, Ambassador Sanchez Rico. I see important authorities of this region, masters in care policies and generation of knowledge about care. So all of you, good morning. Briefly, as I was telling the minister, briefly is something I find hard to make a reality. Sometimes it's difficult in Latin America and in Latin America and the Caribbean to make laws reality. I wanted to say briefly then how we are approaching this belated debt that states have with the recognition of the right to care, this unjustified, discriminatory litany that assigns women almost in exclusivity any remunerated and non-remunerated caregiving work. When we are coming to see at what point in the region, in the country, and in the world that the time has come to unavoidably build integrated systems of care policies based on the approach of international law on human rights and constituents of the constitutions in our own countries, which coincidentally with the European Union, look at the state as a state of law and tend towards a welfare state. This so post-modernistic modernity that challenges us to face up to the future. And we come to this at a point when we're absolutely certain of this feminist principle that what is personal is political. At a time when we are certain that, we knew this already. We women knew this already, but now a bacterium has been the best evidence that if no person, no society, and no country will be capable to recover and reconstruct on its own, reconstruct its horizons or outlook for equality after this existential global crisis, which that nobody can save themselves on their own, we say with the vice minister and also with the Pope. Nobody can be saved on its own. And we also say integral care systems at a time when there is a domino effect of speculation and concentration. Speculation with vaccines and COVID, and now it's with foods, as in the financial crisis of 2008. Concentration because the rich people did better than ever, and the poor people did worse than ever. That the impact of the long-term impact of increased poverty and hunger affects our countries and mostly women and dissidents and children. And it's evident that there's enough food, there's enough power, there's enough energy, there are enough financial resources for us all to be able to face this existential crisis. But the poorer countries, only 14% of the poor country population is vaccinated. So what do we say, or what are we saying when we say that there are enough resources? We're saying that it is necessary to come out from the pandemic debt of hypocrisy at a time when the pandemic debt of COVID has added on to sovereign debts in Latin America and the Caribbean has reached 79. The foreign debt has reached 79.9% of our GDPs in 2021. Why do I say this? Because if we look at evasion and illusion in our region in 2018, in Latin America and the Caribbean, 6.1% of the GDP of the region is eluded, dodged. $325,000 million or billion dollars. Why do I give this data? Because I am in front of you, I respect you, and I have learned from you what care policies are, and we have shared the construction of knowledge with you, knowledge about the right to care. And we know that this presupposes not just to take back up what we're saying from feminism, which is that care is important to sustain life, to eradicate gender stereotypes, and also to achieve fair, egalitarian, and sustainable development. Because with you, I would be this if like in Costa Rica and Chile and Mexico and other places, progress is being made in care policies legislation, and we're doing so in Argentina. We hope that in very short time we will be able to share this news with you. We also have with the EU the key insistence that we must respect and honor the international law on human rights. And care is at the forefront, at the center of that, not just in the declaration, universal declarations, but also the civilian, political, and rights declaration, in the economic and cultural rights declaration, in our legislation. And she lists a series of resolutions of ILO. So I will close to say that this international law on human rights, and with ironical humor, yesterday I was saying that this international law on human rights in a country like Argentina, our country where 30,000 men and women were arrested and made to disappear by state terrorism. It was our activism on international law and our contribution after this experience with international law that allowed us to make never again a reality, really. So these women, these feminists, indigenous and the Afro-Americans who, when the Charter of the United Nations was being debated with the voice of a woman from the Dominican Republic, she said, pick and Flanders, they said, no, not without women. The declaration has to read men and women. No more owning the ghost. So this Latin America and the Caribbean, which when the countries are shamefully present in the decolonization countries, because these are countries that are colonial countries, as in our case. Thank you for your solidarity for our Malvinas cause. It was women who said that even in colonies and while we recover our sovereignty, there could not be human rights had to be applied as well, because the usurpers wanted there not to be human rights in the colonies. So I call upon you all so that in Latin America and the Caribbean, ready for that regional conference on women from the 7th to the 11th of November, which is a society of care, which will be accompanied by the European Union. We ask you all to stand by our convictions again through our multiple, plural, passionate voices, clear voices, to say, as we said at different times, that yet again Latin America and the Caribbean will be the region that, through the voices of women in our diversity, have say and demand that care should be recognized as a right, that it is recognized as a work, and that it is redistributed inequality, and that it should not only translate into a better productivity and competitivity in our countries by the incorporation of women who will be able to work, informal work with a remunerated work, also in care, not just for the sake of the economy, but because, as the European Union says, it is a mandate of social cohesion to live in egalitarian, free, fair societies. And when we speak of care, all of this is what we are building together. Welcome you all. Thank you all for having included us in this challenge and this conviction. Thank you.
We thank Maria Cristina Percival for her words, Secretary of Equality Policies and Gender Equality and Women. And with these eloquent words that have been shared by the three authorities that have made use of the floor, we will declare our seminar open. Care as fourth pillar of the systems of social well-being dialogue in order to move forward with the challenges in this beautiful building, San Martin Palace, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has offered us to use. And we want to thank them for that. We want to thank the authorities once again for this beautiful, this fantastic way of starting. They have contextualized the dialogue we are going to be holding in the morning. Thank you very much. A round of applause, yes. We are going to now continue, and we are going to begin with the dialogue panels of discussion of this seminar. And before that, I would like to invite you to download the last version of the seminar's agenda in the webpage of the initiative, Social Plaza.eu, and also greet those that have connected with the activity through the digital channel, and invite you to visit this site where we will keep on publishing different resources related to the topic of care. I would also like to invite you to prepare questions, because this is going to be a dialogue. Not only listen to experts, but we are also going to have a dialogue with them within the possibilities of time assigned to us and through the different digital channels. Our production team is going to be offering cards so that at the different panels you can reach the panel with your questions. Also, you will have the service of simultaneous interpretation for those presentations that are going to be done in English. In order to start with this first panel, I will allow Miriam Enriquez, researcher associated from the Interdisciplinary Center for Public Policies from the University Alberto Hurtado of Chile and Dean of the School of Law of this university. She is also PhD in legal sciences of Santiago de Compostela Universities with post-PhD, Magister in Public Law from the University Pontificia of Chile, lawyer from Comahue University. Dr. Enriquez will moderate the conference. Challenges and developments of the policies of care in Latin America, and she will introduce the members of the panel. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Jimena, for the introduction. as was said before, we are going to start with the first conference, the first panel, which is called What Has Been Achieved, Challenges and Developments of the Policies of Care in Latin America. We have three important speakers, and we will be able to answer a question in the morning, which is why the implementation of integrated care systems should be in the political agenda and a priority of Latin American countries. We are going to have a methodology that we are going to stick to because of time, where we will listen to the presentation of Julio Bango, then different comments of Emanuel Pagolini and Laura Pautasi, and then we are going to develop a general question if time allows us to, but we want to urge you to ask questions to the speakers. So the methodology is foreseen time-wise. You know that time is tyrant, and I will have to be moderator and make you stick to time. Presentations of those that will participate in this panel. First of all, Julio Bango. He specializes in sociology. His professional expertise is in the area of design, assessment, and management of policies. He's a researcher, National Secretary of Integrated Care in Uruguay between 2015 2020. Today, he's a consultant of the regional area of UN Women as Eurosocial expert and Frederick Herbert Foundation also. He has provided counselship in Argentina, the Dominican Republic, Cuba. Emanuel Pavolini specializes in economic sociology in Italy, Macerata University. He has vested his interest in two areas. First, studies of well-being status, comparing the different policies of care and family, and also in the research of the labor market and economic development, focusing on the changing roles of professionals, networking in company strategies for competitiveness, and the role of immigrants in the labor market. Dr. Pavolini is going to be on streaming. And then Laura Pautasi, specialized in research from the CONICET and the School of Law of Buenos Aires University, director of the UBA Group on Public Policies, works for the ILO and specializes in social economic rights, focuses on gender policies and well-being and indicators of public policies. The curricula of these speakers is very long, but we've summarized it. And I would like to share good news with you, as Jimena introduced me as moderator of the panel in Chile. And you know that very well. We are going through a process of elections. And throughout this week, we've passed an article, which is Article 10. This Article 10 integrates the constitutional draft and deals with right to care. It is a good news to share with you. This is a news that introduces the topic very well. This Article 10 has three parts. One part has to do with the right to care, to receive care and self-care. In a second paragraph, it refers to the comprehensive system of care based on different principles that will be dealt with in the morning: universality, solidarity, equality, gender approach, human rights approach, and then focused on the people that require care because they have some special vulnerabilities. This initiative, this right in particular, we can say formally as of this week, was based on an initiative by the feminists of the convention. This convention is integrated equally with the support of different women and feminist organizations, and particularly I would like to highlight that this is an initiative, a popular initiative based on the Constitution developed by Alberto Hurtado University, where the Center of Public Policies is part of. We are proud of that. With this introduction, I believe that we will declare the debate open. Julio, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers of the meeting for having given me the opportunity of speaking to you here, and to those who are on the streaming. Congratulations, Chile, and which together with Mexico are in their process of incorporating the right to care to their constitutions. And I would like to briefly go through a series of issues that try to give an initial response to the question that our moderator asked. I think that this meeting itself is an indicator that care is gaining momentum in the region. As you know, there are representatives from several countries from Latin America and the Caribbean here, and this has to do with the effort that has been made by the international cooperation to give a strategic framework to the need of care in a continent and a region. And it also has to do with the results obtained by the struggle of feminist movements, organizations for the rights of children and the elderly, and union movements who have fought for including in the agenda the need to guarantee the right to care through public policies. So this particular situation, also the states very clear-mindedly have been able to identify that they're facing challenges that the current welfare systems cannot solve, and therefore they have to move towards the construction of integrated care systems. So the first thing I would like to do very quickly, because we only have 15 minutes for this, is to give an early definition of the concept of care, because it has many meanings. When we speak about care, we talk about care at home, care from the health point of view, from the point of view of safety and security, and from the environmental point of view. But if we are going to implement care public policies, we have to restrict that concept to become to make care operational in the terms of public policies, care services, etc. So this definition is key to be able to be efficient in public policies, but not to isolate it from other systems of social policies, such as education, healthcare, or safety or security, but it has to have a capacity to link to these other concepts. So care has to do with all the actions to contribute to guarantee the right to care of the elderly and of the disabled who are dependent and therefore do not have who have lack either totally or partially the possibility of developing their activities of daily living themselves, and all the children from 0 to 10 years of age, but regardless of their economic or income situation, all children are in a process of conquering their own autonomy, which has to be defended, strengthened, and supported so that they can become citizens that can operate adequately in society. And also care can be seen in two dimensions. It can be a right that the people who require it have, and also as a social function which somebody takes care of or carries out, and that is essential for society. So the outlook of understanding care from these two points of views will allow us to identify the populations who will be subject to care policies from the outlook of rights, those who require the rights, children, elderly and disabled, and dependent, and from the other side, on the other view, the caregivers, and leads us to think of implementation of of caregivers who are either paid or unpaid. And this definition defines the framework to implement public policies. So let us now go on to a more global question, which is to discuss the issues that we mentioned at the beginning. A priori, the diagnosis that we can carry out is that beyond the heterogeneity of the different situations in our country, the welfare systems, which are sometimes considered as social protection systems, but I want to underscore that many times social protection systems englobe all the policies that are aimed at protecting socially vulnerable populations. This is not our concept here. We prefer to talk about a welfare system because rights outlook has to be universal, and then we can focus later on. It can focus on different populations, but the context of implementation of a care system has to be universal. And the problem that we're having beyond the differences in the different countries, all countries are having the problems of these welfare systems have been built through on the basis of three pillars: education, healthcare, and social security. But the problem that we're having, and that our states are in agreement with, is that the welfare system cannot resolve the challenges posed by new demands for citizens' rights and the new societies, and therefore has to be changed. So which are the factors, to list them very quickly, that are explaining, that are at the base of this impossibility of our welfare systems to respond to the challenges in the region? Firstly, there is a process of change. There is a process of demographic transition, which, as you all know, advanced, and region shows a reduction in the fertility rates and the life expectancy, and an increase of the elderly population that will configure a situation towards 2040, where the demographic ratio between the capacity for work and inactive population will narrow, and therefore this will create a fiscal pressure on our economies to see who will finance welfare. And apart from that demographic transition, there are change processes in terms of women's emancipation, changes in family arrangements, entry of women into the labor market because of economic needs, and also because of changes in society, and which leads to, in relation to care, leads to a social organization of care which befalls on hundreds of women in our continent who take our caregivers at home. Why do I explain this? Because these welfare systems were based on a sexual labor division, and men had to go to work, and women had to go to care, and therefore it wasn't perceived that there had to be public policies to guarantee the right to care. But that organization, as I say, it cannot be supported in the short or medium term. Those who opened the seminar showed that COVID allowed a visualization of the problem of thousands of women with the confinement and close down of services had to redouble their care time, which generated a loss of opportunity to generate income through work. So we need to move on towards a new social organization of caregiving. And when we're talking about caregiving systems and their construction, we have to understand that they have to change the social organization of caregiving, and that means that we have to guarantee public policies that ensure those rights, but also the exercise of those rights, reconstructing the welfare system with the fourth pillar, which is the pillar of caregiving, which will generate the schematics that will break up the social division of labor, which as a sexual division of labor, which new social organization of work, of care, and will go to a responsible, gender-oriented organization of care. The idea, this is a long-term construction, of course, but the idea is that if we don't start, we'll never finish. And what does this entail? It entails basically, maybe two aspects. One, to coordinate all the towards the populations which are subject to care on along five simultaneous components. Many times when we speak about caregiving policies, we think of services, but it is not just a matter of building, creating caregiving systems, but we also have to have regulations that will establish quality standards for that system, that will establish the rules of the game for caregiving workers to have dignified and formal jobs in care, to look after the training of the people who are caregivers, to guarantee the quality of services, the actions to generate and manage information and public knowledge that will allow us to be more efficient, and communication action to promote the laws and the rights and the promotion of cultural change and gender responsibility. And it also requires to advance a mode of governance that this is a difficult challenge, and therefore we must coordinate the institutions that may converge towards the construction of the caregiving system. Why? To take advantage of the existing installed capacity in our society. I'm going to move on because I'm running out of time. Countries were working on this yesterday, so I'm not going to dwell on this. There are different realities. The interesting thing is that we're not starting from scratch. We're not starting afresh. There are caregiving systems in many of our countries. There are sectorial care policies, childhood. I don't want to pinpoint on any country, but there are countries here that have a long tradition in these policies, a lot less in care of the elderly and the disabled. But there are countries that do have those systems, and the idea is to take a leap towards building the policies around three components that aim at the three populations that are the subjects of the caregiving policies. I'm going to leave the list of experiences to one side. So there are many interesting examples. I have a question now. Is it realistic to ask in a region where we have not sorted out problems of poverty and inequality, where our healthcare, social security, and education systems have enormous deficits? Is it realistic to propose the creation of a caregiving system? I say yes, it is realistic and it is necessary for two reasons. Number one, because it won't be possible to have successful strategies to overcome poverty and inequality if care is not included as a part of the strategy, because in a region where there is a large majority of single-parent homes which are poor, and 85% are under a woman's and with children, if we not generate conditions that will for these women to access income and quality jobs to will allow them uh, to overcome poverty, we will not have a chance. And there's another factor, the positive externalities that caregiving system generates on the quality and the impacts of the education system, because it's been shown that children, the better they start off in the care and child development, the better will they perform at school, and because in healthcare systems there are studies in the United States and Spain, which I cannot quote now, but that show that, for example, in Spain, the dependency law led to a reduction of 14% in hospitalization. That those are positive externalities in terms of the economy of healthcare systems. And to give you just to give you a few examples, I think that it is not a superfluous task. It's not the cherry on the on the icing of the social system, but it is a matter that has to be looked at as in the framework of overcoming the difficulties that we still have, or the challenges that we still have. And to close, I will give you the support. I'm telling you, we have to turn and have a shift in terms of the strategic perspective of the construction of a fourth pillar of welfare and of reformulating the management to make it more effective and efficient. But we have many assets already that we have to use intelligently in our countries. So let's imagine, to close, that we're in 2040. What's going to happen in 2040? In 2040, we're going to have a society with an elderly population, which is going to be a lot larger in relative terms, and we're going to have a very strong stress on the welfare system financing, which will have to do with social welfare and financing. So the 2040 population will need to generate the wealth to be able to finance these systems, and it will have to meet two conditions. Firstly, we will not have the luxury, which we don't have now, by the way, is that not all people who want to work can do. And we all know that female activity rates are much higher than male activity rates, and there is a gap of the activity rate in between the activity rates as a result of women not being able to get into good conditions in the job market because they have to be caregivers. And the second condition for the economically active population 2040 is going to be that they will have to have workers who have high levels of productivity to generate the wealth that will be required to finance the welfare. And those 2040 workers are the children that we need to take care of today and make sure that they get proper education, develop properly, and become critical citizens who will fight for their rights, but also capable to generate the wealth that will need to finance welfare. So many times it's said that economic growth is key to be achieved first to be able to redistribute. What I want to say is that social investment and care investment is key to ensure economic growth to then be redistributed for social equality. So if we assume that strategic outlook, I think I have supported my claim that it is necessary to develop care systems. They are expensive, but it is even much more expensive not to have care systems. Thank you, Julio.
Al tiempo previsto.
Thank you, Julio, for sticking to the time assigned, and we will allow people to make comments. Dr. Pavolini, who is connected here. Good afternoon, Dr. Emmanuel. We have 5 minutes for comments and reactions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and to be invited to discuss. And I would like to thank you all
Second, I would like to thank Julio Bango for his very inspiring presentation. Practically, I should say that I totally agree with the framework that he has just presented, including the last part on demographic trends, on aging and what is going to happen or is already happening in Latin America as well as in Europe. My comments are like 5 comments, are very short, less than a minute each. The first one goes back exactly to what Julio said. If we frame care as investments in infrastructure, then we need to invest in care policies. Investment in infrastructure are a major asset for our countries to grow in the long term. And there is the whole issue of social infrastructure. So not just investing on bridges, roads, the internet, but it's about education and healthcare and increasingly care policies. So I think the European Union and many countries in the EU have this point very clear, and I'm happy that we totally share this framework. Second point is another issue that Julio brought it up, and also
también sacó Julio y los otros oradores también. Si nosotros queremos tener el cuidado como cuarto pilar, tenemos que tener integración de cuidado. Es decir, no solamente considerar el cuidado como un pilar, sino que también de cómo integrar las políticas de cuidado con la educación, con la salud, etcétera, etcétera. En este aspecto seguramente sepan acerca de esto, pero les sugiero analizar un programa muy importante que fuera lanzado por la Unión Europea y los Estados miembros en el último año, que se llama la garantía infantil como recomendación. La idea es que ustedes y cada país europeo deberían invertir recursos para asegurar los derechos básicos, 5 derechos básicos a los niños o residentes de menos de 18 años con respecto al derecho a acceder a servicios de cuidado decentes, el derecho a acceder a educación decente, acceder a suministro de salud mental o cuidados de salud mental. Tenemos un problema de salud mental con la gente joven después de la pandemia, que es un problema ya. Nosotros estamos hablando del derecho de los niños a tener un techo adecuado, decente y nutrición decente, nutrición. La idea es comenzar con esto. La idea es que cada país de la Unión Europea debería fomentar los derechos de los niños en los 5 servicios mencionados. Tengo que decir que en mi opinión nosotros nos vemos inspirados por programas latinoamericanos que fueron lanzados en los últimos 20 años para luchar contra la pobreza infantil, la educación, etcétera. Así que hay mucha fertilización cruzada y esto puede mejorar nuestro conocimiento común y políticas. Un tercer punto que se trata de cuidados infantiles o a los niños. Desde mi perspectiva quiero aclarar algo. Comparado con el cuidado de largo plazo, la discapacidad del cuidado infantil es más híbrido como política, porque no se trata de cuidado solamente, se enmarca cada vez más como educación. En un abordaje de inversión social tenemos que invertir en guarderías, en servicios para los niños de menos de 3 años. No solamente ocuparnos de ellos, sino que también educarlos, invertir en su educación y en su capital humano desde la cuna. Un cuarto punto y casi termino. Entonces, con mis 5 puntos, esto es bastante complicado y espero no equivocarme, pero para mí, cuando nosotros hablamos de cuidados, tenemos que primero pensar en los derechos a cuidado de los individuos frágiles, los añosos, los que tienen discapacidad, los niños, enmarcar las políticas de cuidado para reforzar en primer lugar los derechos de los beneficiarios directos. Luego, por supuesto, estas políticas tienen que tener un rol importante para las familias, para las madres, para los padres, para los niños que tienen abuelos mayores, niños con discapacidades. Es muy importante tratar de evaluar y proteger en primer lugar y promover los derechos de los individuos y luego, por supuesto, los derechos de las familias. Por último, y luego detengo mis comentarios, no permitimos atajos. Si estamos de acuerdo, como dijo Julio, en que esto tiene que ser una inversión pública, una cosa que yo aprendí de las políticas europeas de cuidado en los campos de discapacidad y cuidados de largo plazo e infantil, es que cada vez que decimos que parte de los gastos de la financiación viene directamente del sector privado, viene directamente de las familias mismas, entonces lo que están diciendo es que van a aceptar un alto nivel de desigualdad en el acceso a estos servicios. Y esto es especialmente verdadero para los cuidados de largo plazo. Si nosotros queremos evitar las desigualdades en el acceso, desigualdades sociales, el acceso requiere de responsabilidad, de financiación, soluciones del mercado privado, soluciones de las familias para no reforzar las desigualdades. Gracias por su atención, gracias por invitarme.
Muchas gracias, Emanuel, por los comentarios. Continuamos entonces con las reacciones a la excelente presentación de Julio a cargo de Laura.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, muy buenos días, muchas gracias por la invitación particularmente de Eurosocial.
Thank you, Eurosocial, and Virginia Tedeschi, who is always fostering these aspects. The presentation of Julio triggered a lot of things. And we have to think about the feminist demand and the Feminist Academy and what it had constructed. We are not starting from scratch, but this region, inspired on the literature and the Anglo-Saxon literature, there is a special recognition to the Ibero-American policies that inspired us to think that care is a work that should be visibilized. And it took us very many years for the movement of women to consider this a social demand. Today, women are centered on remunerated work and care. So we've arrived at a crucial moment, as was said by Julio, where to this process of autochthonous construction of care as a work, but mainly as a human right, we need to think that we are not starting from scratch, because the governments of the regions, together with the women organizations in the Conference of Quito of the year 2007, came to an agreement, and they stated that care is a human right, the right to be cared for, the right to self-care and to care for others. And we know it implies the right to not taking care of as well. This consensus was stated in the agenda. The presence of Julio is very important because of the pioneer system of Uruguay in care that allowed us to think how this process of consensus became empirical evidence. And as Julio said in his presentation today, we have 12 countries of the region going towards the same direction. The consensus of the conference that will be held in Argentina, Buenos Aires, this will be a great moment because we are thinking about societies which are centered on care. Regarding the question of the panel, why is it a need for care to be included in the public agenda? Because it is a right acknowledged by the states, and this implies positive and negative obligations and responsibilities. Responsibilities to do and not to do things on behalf of the state, but also to provide things on behalf of the state, but also establish responsibilities on the side subjects that integrate care. Diamond, this diamond of care that was considered the diamond of care by the literature that inspires us, which is the link between the states, the communities, the social organizations, and the families. Today, institutionalization is present. We need to visibilize all this, as the literature states. With the pandemics, we've been able to make it more visible. We need to think about the institutionality based on the four pillars, and the fourth one of social protection. We should not confuse prescription of public policies in terms of preventions or hand washing as being care. We need to come to a consensus about the name of care or what care implies. Even though international treaties were slower in incorporating care as a concept of dignified life of the system of social protection, care had been already incorporated. The Inter-American Convention on Human Rights of the Elderly of the year 2015 speaks about the right to care. And today we celebrate not only in Mexico, but also Chile goes along the same line. And we celebrate all this. So today we are together to base ourselves on the fourth pillar, the concept of right to care, which is clear and has a legal impact that we should not neglect. Not only construction, because it detaches us from the need, and this need that was marked as a frontier regarding people that are vulnerable is what acknowledgement as a human right wants to break with this concept of vulnerability. We all have the right to care, to be cared for, and to self-care. Not many people have empowered themselves with this right. Autonomous people are the ones that exercise self-care, and women are key. But vulnerability should not be left aside, should not mark a distance with systems of social vulnerability. We have biases of gender in social security, because the components of social security are associated to remunerated job, and ideally the worker is heterosexual and man in the work or labor market. These gender biases that mark a distance with the systems of social protection, and we see that today bureaucracies assign the programs of income transference without recognition of the right to care, this lack of acknowledgement of care. When we rethink this pillar of social protection, it shouldn't be linked to the need. I think it shouldn't be linked to vulnerability. It should be based on the interdependence of human rights within the system of inter-American protection, acting for a design. And Julio challenged us to construct systems transforming the idea of a system. Julio was saying, and I will close with this, we need to change in the conceptualization of welfare systems. But the bridge proposed by human rights is to establish this link between international agreements and consensus in place and public policies. But not only public policies need to respond. We need to transform the system, transform all the different sectors of the state, society, the market, and social communities. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your commentary. And while we get the questions you might wish to ask, especially to our speakers, in each presentation, there is a common point, which is the discussion of care policies cannot be separated from the discussion on the financing. And from your point of views and experience, how would you visualize which could be the mechanisms for financing which are necessary or possible to ensure the operation of an integrated care system. Maybe we could have 3 minutes each for this new round. Julio, you get started first. Of course, this is key. All those who are working on public policies and who are responsible for government, and those of us who have already been there, this is a key issue. And my conclusion from now on, not just as an observer of reality, but also having had the experiences, that it is not sustainable or viable to finance a caregiving system only with the state, from the state budget. It is not sustainable if, as Laura said, we are in an outlook of universal care that will universalize and guarantee access to the rights of all people who require care. And there we have to start looking at experience, and we had to start to look at the experience of Europe. Were able to discuss with people with South Korea to see how they were solving the problem of financing. And what is clear from my point of view, at least, is that we have to go to a perspective of integrating mixed models where inevitably there has to be a contribution from the state, which is essential, of course, because I agree with the discussion of co-responsibility, social co-responsibility, the responsibility of the market, the social society and the state and the families, but the state has the capacity to guarantee or not the rights of people, of all people. So co-responsibility is not symmetrical in terms of responsibility. The state will always have a bigger responsibility because it's the one that can ensure the rights, but we must also think of the contribution made by the private sector, financing in the framework of rules of the game that will ensure common standards for access, and the private sector has to be incorporated. But if we were to go for private sector financing only, the problem is that we will have heterogeneity in quality and in diversity of the capacity of access to quality services, because only those who have the capacity to purchase those services in the market will be able to access quality services. So it is not viable to go towards a private insurance system, but we have to have strong state investment. But even going further, if we want to finance welfare, and with this I'm going to finish this with a Swedish person, they were telling me, yeah, what do I want? At the time when you need some money in your pocket is between when you are between 25 and 50 in your active age, because that's when you have requirements. But from that stage, I have less money in my pocket, but I make sure that my children or myself were able to develop and taken care of adequately, and I'm making sure that if I require it when I'm old, I will be covered and have a guarantee. I would rather have less money in my pocket during my active years, but to ensure that I will have that right throughout my whole life cycle. So I think we should go towards solidary caregiving funds so that empirically solidarity can be concretely established in financing, so that we need the contribution of everybody to finance the care of everybody. This is not a simple thing, because we are all feeling that tax burden is enormous, but this discussion cannot be given without discussing the tax systems of our countries. In Chile, for example, there will be a discussion of a tax reform. And I was telling the people from the Chilean government, well, this is the opportunity to discuss the future financing of a care system. So I think that the debate should be tabled on those terms. It is not desirable to be exclusively private, but it has to be, the state has to intervene to ensure rights and guarantee rights, but it's not enough. And we have to think think of solidarity contribution mechanisms from society to be able to finance care at the present and the future. I'm being told, yes, that we have no more time, but we have 35 seconds for Laura and Emanuele to see if we can add on to anything that Julio has just said. Emanuele was before me. Emanuele, please be brief.
As fast as possible. I would say that one thing that could be done is what is called recalibration. So it's possible to shift part of public expenditure from other social policy fields to the care fields. I can bring you the German example. In the 90s, the Germans did a pension reform, which made slightly less generous pensions. At the same time, they used that money to strengthen the long-term care pillar. Because, of course, you can become old. I repeat something that Julio said in other terms. You can become old. You can have a good pension. But if you do not have any public support, if you become frail, then your pension will not help that much. So one opportunity is recalibration. The other, I'm sorry, is just policy choice. I mean, there are countries in Europe like mine that spend just 1.5% of their GDP on long-term care, and countries like Denmark that spend 3% of their GDP on long-term care. So it's also about setting priorities. Thanks.
Gracias, Emanuel.
Muy breve, este debate ya se dio con los derechos.
This debate has also taken place with the rights, the economic, social, and cultural rights. Argentina is the last country that worked out the contribution of unremunerated care work at homes, and we have to think of a new global chains of care. But a great theoretician, María Ángeles Durán, also warns us we have to recover the confidence in the state, and that is very important. So maybe the final comment I would like to share is that we have to think that we don't have to change the welfare systems, but we have to think of care-giving systems, and that would be the challenge in the future. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la
Thank you all for your attention and for the excellent presentations. There are many things to discuss and things, so we will continue with the next of the panels and next panels. And we thank you all for your presentation, and we will all keep in touch.
Muchas gracias a Miriam.
Thank you, Miriam Enriquez, and all the members of the panel who have shared their visions and their opinions. We will now start the round table, which I've entitled How Public Policies Are Structuring the Offer of Caregiving Systems in a Logic of Integrated Systems. Virginia Tedeschi is going to direct this roundtable. She is the Southern Cone Technician of Eurosocial Plus, the program. Virginia is a lawyer by the University of Buenos Aires, and she is a master's in public policies and gender policies. She will direct or lead this panel. We will have the Lucilia Silmio Bon, who is the Undersecretary of Policy of the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity of Argentina, Francisco Delgado Jimenez, the Vice Minister of Human Development and Social Inclusion of Costa Rica. And I now give Virginia Tedeschi the floor to moderate this roundtable. Thank you, Jimena. I think you can hear me okay. Well, we know that time is short, but we wanted to discuss you that for those of us who have been organizing for some time already this session, we thought it was very important to call upon those who are leading care policies. So before introducing those who are here, are high-ranking authorities of different countries in South America, they are already working on the construction and policies. And I want to simply say that we, from the European program, Eurosocial, and different areas of social and gender equality policies, we have been accompanying together with IDB and IFD, the construction of a long-term care in care network in the continent. And we thought it was important for us to accompany the different efforts that are taking place in different territories with their own peculiarities. Yesterday, we had the 6th meeting of the network in presence, and we have the authorities from Paraguay, Costa Rica, and Argentina on the stage, but we have authorities in the room from CISCA, Dominican Republic, Paraguay, different countries that are working on the care agenda of the region, and
quienes van a estar acompañando este diálogo sobre cómo las políticas públicas están estructurando la oferta de servicios de cuidado en una lógica de sistema integrado. Nos acompaña la ministra de la Mujer de Paraguay, Celina Lescano. Es licenciada en Hotelería y Turismo por la Universidad Católica Nuestra Señora de Asunción y diplomada en Pedagogía y Educación Superior por la Universidad de Columbia. Antes de ocupar el puesto de ministra, Celina Lescano fue presidenta de la Asociación Paraguaya de Mujeres Empresarias, Ejecutivas y Profesionales, APEP. También está aquí Francisco Delgado, viceministro de Desarrollo Humano e Inclusión Social de Costa Rica, máster en Administración Pública en Desarrollo Internacional por la Universidad de Harvard y licenciado en Economía por la Universidad de Costa Rica. Ha trabajado como economista de políticas sociales en Costa Rica, en el Instituto Mixto de Ayuda y en el Fondo de Desarrollo Social y Asignaciones Familiares, y ha publicado numerosas investigaciones académicas sobre pobreza, desigualdad y mercado laboral, y también ha sido docente en la Escuela de Economía de la Universidad de Costa Rica. También quiero presentar a Lucía Sirmio Bon, reciente flamante subsecretaria de Políticas de Igualdad del Ministerio de las Mujeres, Géneros y Diversidad de Argentina. Lucía Sirmio Bon, hasta hace poquito, era directora nacional de cuidados y tiene mucho para comentar del proceso que se está llevando adelante en el país. Es economista, magna cum laude de la Universidad de Buenos Aires, magíster en estudios del desarrollo del International Institute of Social Studies de Holanda, y actualmente está haciendo el doctorado en la Universidad Nacional de Quilmes. Trabajó en la coordinación y el diseño de un programa de Argentina que se llama Progresar, así como tantas otras políticas públicas. Aquí no lo menciona, pero sé que Lucía en muchos otros ámbitos cuando se presenta dice que nada de todo esto y nada de lo que ella lleva adelante tiene sentido si no es para mejorar las condiciones de vida de las personas. Dicho esto, y pensando, como ya decía el panel anterior, que ningún país está construyendo de cero las políticas de cuidado, sino que hoy en América Latina el tema está fuerte, como también lo ha estado en Europa, y está siendo repensado también en función de las consecuencias que ha traído la pandemia, que ha puesto de resalto también de alguna manera la crisis de los cuidados. Simplemente les quiero preguntar, y empezamos en tal caso primero Celina, luego Francisco y luego Lucía, ¿cuáles son los principales desafíos y tensiones a abordar para implementar sistemas de cuidados integrales con enfoques de derechos a partir de la realidad particular de cada uno de sus países?
Bueno, antes que nada, muy buenos días a los compañeros que nos acompañan acá en el panel, a todos los presentes, y realmente muy enriquecedor estos 2 días de compartir las experiencias y lecciones aprendidas de los diferentes países y ver también cómo nosotros desde Paraguay estamos avanzando en la política nacional de cuidado. Realmente ya hace una década que estamos en este diálogo interinstitucional compartido con todas las instituciones que cumplen un rol protagónico y que de alguna u otra manera ya están brindando servicios a la ciudadanía. Realmente desde Paraguay estamos en una hoja de ruta donde estamos avanzando, como ya lo compartimos ayer, ya presentamos ese proyecto de ley al Parlamento, está en proceso. Realmente lo que estamos haciendo con el grupo impulsor también de la Política Nacional de Cuidado, es importante recalcar ese compartir y esas lecciones aprendidas de todas las instituciones, y lo que nos va a ayudar esta política nacional de cuidado es a seguir formalizando, a seguir consolidando estas instituciones que ya brindan estos servicios, y nosotras desde el Ministerio de la Mujer como órgano rector y articulador de las políticas públicas, realmente establecer las políticas públicas que den respuestas rápidas a la ciudadanía y que podamos realmente brindar ese servicio público que se necesita. Hablar un poco de lo que estamos haciendo en Paraguay va a llevar mucho tiempo. Ayer compartimos algunos de los desafíos que ya los compartieron los compañeros anteriormente, para no hablar de lo mismo, del financiamiento, de los servicios, también resaltar la oferta y la demanda también de lo que implica la Política Nacional de Cuidados en cuanto a los servicios. Estamos ahora trabajando, gracias a ONU Mujeres también vamos a tener ese paneo y esa información que necesitamos para realmente enfocarnos en lo que es importante para poder hacer realmente algo fructífero para la Política Nacional de Cuidado.
Muchas gracias, Celina. Te pasamos la palabra a Francisco.
Muchas gracias, Virginia. Muy buenos días a todas las personas que están en esta sala y quienes acompañan de manera virtual también este evento. En este momento quisiera compartir la experiencia de Costa Rica al contar ya con un año de implementación de una política pública de cuidados y recientemente la aprobación de un proyecto.
And recently, the approval of a bill creating a system of support and care in the country. We don't start from scratch. We have a long-term commitment with care that the country has assumed. And I would like to highlight which have been 3 great challenges in this implementation process. Much has been said in the previous panel from a general perspective, but I would like to get into the detail of management implied by governance and what does finance imply? Which are the discussions we need to have in order to materialize these elements? And a third element is how do we provide new services based on the existing ones? When we speak about governance, it may sound romantic to design an organizational chart to define tasks, but the task of articulating is not easy, and it is not easy because this is a multi-dimension problem. Many institutions from the public arena are involved in this topic, so putting institutions with different assignments in the same area when they think in isolation and not in an integrated form, and putting in the middle the guaranteeing of these rights is complex. Let's add to this the complexity when we talk about integrating social aspects with healthcare. So there is difficulty in governance. And I believe that what countries have done is create special secretariats to articulate, to coordinate, involving the political and technical aspects. In the case of Costa Rica, one of the challenges we have is that we haven't been able to create a technical instance, a secretariat for the deployment of all this. And during the last year, from the Vice Ministry, we have led implementation from the political and technical point of view. And as staff, specialized in policy design, not only designing public policies, but also thinking about implementation with the support of an institutional or interinstitutional table where we've defined the different objectives for the second year, for the first one, and the third one. So we've tried to implement a dynamics of technical elements that will be allowing for the expansion of a new system, providing new services. And I want to add another element that The design and first-year implementation was done during the pandemics, and therefore the coordination amongst the different institutions happened virtually with some visits presentially, but most of this was done virtually or digitally. The second challenge relates to funding or finance. And I believe that when we think about funding care services, one of the big concerns is how do we fund our social protection matrix in an informal context in our countries and within a context of increasing aging of the population. So how do we finance these protection services? There is conflict here with how to finance new services and finance more people or include more people in the system, breaking with the logic, which is if we want to achieve a model of selective policies or another model that should be universal in nature, if we want to guarantee people's rights, children's rights, vulnerable people's rights, and women's rights. And in our case, this has had a very important hurdle that has to do with tax restrictions or fiscal restrictions, agreement with the IMF that limits investment in the social aspects. And here, this is about how to position our logics regarding the deficit, the debt, and how do we move forwards. Because it's more expensive not to have a system of care than to have one. So these social benefits with gender equality, etc., how having a system like this may generate profits and savings in other areas by linking or including more people in the formal labor market. And another element I would like to talk about is the logic behind creating new services, because this is very complex, mainly from the logic of public administration or providing some services, how to break away or being disruptive in the inclusion of technology to provide telecare, how to use IT systems to connect the social aspects with healthcare. How do we incorporate new transferences related to care without this generating incentives, or how to choose who are going to be the people that will receive transfer for care? These are some of the elements that in practice, together with the construction of technical elements, have allowed us to consolidate a set of elements, or what I call the assembly or the scaffold of a system. It is very interesting, Francisco, because Costa Rica has been implementing a system already. This is why it is important to listen to Lucia today, that for a year and a half has been implementing design of policies. Thank you very much, Virginia. Good morning, everybody. It is an honor to be here and to share with Paraguay, Costa Rica, and other countries these experiences. At this room, we all work in policies for care. In a certain way, in Argentina, I believe that we did two parallel jobs. On the one hand, the coordination and articulation of what there is in place, and then on the other hand, the design of what's lacking. I see people from the Ministry of Labor, the INAE, with whom we've been working in the interministerial table of policies for care, in the national campaign of care, inequality, and gender equality. And we see members of the commission, publishing commission, or rapporteurs that did the editing, that participated in the drafting of this bill. together with people from the ministry and other sectors and thinking about the challenges here. There are very many, but let me tell you about 6. First, keeping a balance amongst the objectives, the needs of each of the populations involved in a system of care, and also to speak in their language. I believe that we have a shared diagnosis that in care, the first thing that appears is care for the children. But keeping a balance in disability, we speak more about support than care. Maybe dependence is not the best word to use. Think about what each of the populations require as far as care is concerned and their problems. Then think about overcoming tensions when we speak positively about the lack of familiarization in the participatory project, in the draft bill with the world of children. We thought this is quality of life of women versus quality of life of children, boys and girls. And this is not what care is meant to be. When a woman is empowered with economic autonomy, with time to organize, quality of care of people that are cared for also improves. So this is important to mention. On the other hand, in the future of labor with an expansion of care systems, there will be work for everybody. There are union tensions here generally as far as services provided. There are different types of dependence, different services with different professionals. There needs to be certification, and the organization of care requires a lot of professionalization and many people from different worlds. There will be a place for everybody in this world of care. Regarding financial funding, many challenges ahead. Argentina is a federal country, so there are many issues that have to do with the expansion of infrastructure and care services that needs to be articulated with the provinces. And sometimes there are resources to expand the infrastructure in elderly people with disability. But the political question is, what is infrastructure for these vulnerable populations? It is difficult then to finance these areas. On the other hand, in debate with the economic spheres about expansion of budget, there is the question of how much do we spend today in care? And this is a question which is difficult to answer because you may have a wider criterion or a narrower one. But if we are too generous and say, oh, this is already a care policy, people will think that we don't need more finance aspects. So we need to rethink about care and how to label it. 5, I think it's very important to think about care as in a wider sense, in simpler terms, not thinking about the typical family. We have to focus as well on diversity because the weakest links of the chain do not belong to the normal, regular family. There are some other homes with a single father, single mother, different people that are excluded from the care network, lesbian, gay communities, the LGBT network, even though this agenda brings the feminist institutions, if they want to have an impact in the social organization of care, in order to have an impact, they need to construct a lot, because these gender institutions are put at a symbolic area. So I was saying that I would identify all this. There are many more things, but I think we need to work collectively all together for this to be successful.
Thank you, Lucia. I'm not sure whether at the beginning we mentioned that in this room we don't only have authorities from the governments of the region, but we have already invited almost all the ministries that make up the inter-ministry roundtable, and we thank all the members of the drafting committee. And another question that is usually asked when we plan this space, we wanted to take advantage of your experience, would be what have been or who have been the key parties and key allies, apart from designing the policy. We know that the region is very wealthy, it's different, which is the ruling organization or the ruling agency is different. Sometimes there's the social action ministries, others the women's ministries, others the economy ministries, and here we have members present who are from those sectors. So from that point of view, from the experience in your countries, which would be or have been the main allies that are already today working with you or that you would like to incorporate? Maybe we could start with Francisco now. Yes, in the case, yes, you can hear me. In our case, the leading parties that have worked institutionally with us have been international organizations, in the case the IDB, which with different technical cooperation processes has financed a large part of what we've done, specific studies for the design and justification of a care policy to ILO and other agencies. In the case of childhood, UNICEF and Eurosocial, that have, and other sectors, others are specific examples, but there have not been generalized participation of other sectors. Some civil society organizations with disabled or cooperatives and have tried to enter to work in some of the services, but unfortunately this has not been a demand from the unions or a cause that has been taken up from by the private sector, which we think that in the implementation phase is one of the parties that we should link with us or relate to us, not only in what has to do with financing, but also the other responsibilities that have to do with the implementation of public policy of this time. Selina, from the Paraguay experience, please. Well, just as our colleague just said, the European Union, Eurosocial, UN Women and Fiat have several international organizations have helped us to go along the roadmap that we had already established in those international organizations and the agreements and protocols that we take as guidance, and also the Constitution of Paraguay and the group that we formed in the Ministry of Women as the leading body. We have to underscore coordination because each institution, as I said before, has a leading role in the national policy of care, and all of them are protagonists. They all have their position and they all contribute their grain of sand to make this possible in Paraguay. Just as the international organization, there's also the responsibility of the citizenship to have active and participating citizens that can cooperate in this joint work that we are carrying out in the Women's Ministry, or Ministry of Women, and together with the socialization workshops are very important, because once a parliament can undertake this work of coming to agreements. They have several committees working there, and they request information from the public sector, from the private sector, and from civil society and international organizations. And for us, this is very important because this clears off the challenges and will facilitate the work of implementing the national caregiving policy, and will make us all responsible for this, and not just the main leading body. But this will be a triumph for the country as a whole, and will make the Paraguayan state a protagonist in this transforming story. Yes, Lucia, in Argentina, which allies, which are your allies? I would say, firstly, the feminist movement. They started to put pressure on this matter. International organizations have cooperated with us. The journalists are also very important, and I would say more and more so social movements, not just unions, but also social organizations. And for that, I think it's strategic, and it's linked to your next question. But I will say this from now, which is to be able to explain rather, or open up to interpret these themes from the old themes that society have been concerned about. Informality, inequality, poverty. Why is this a solution for these old issues that society has? And if that link is not established, it's very difficult. It should not be felt as something brought from the outside, as imported, but it's how the caregiving agenda solves the problems that our society has and has been having for a long time. Yeah, so thank you very much. We will go on to the last few questions, and some questions from the audience that have to do, yes, Lucia, maybe if you want to continue with this idea, it has to do with what are the lessons learned, and what recommendations you would make, thinking of other countries that are at different stages of the roadmap and in the process, and that it's worth sharing, continued sharing. We've been doing this for a couple of days in Argentina already with other countries, but maybe we could pick up from there. Yes, so I would say that the lessons learned speak with those old problems, which are questions of why does the care agenda solve these questions? And as again, in terms of investment, as an economist, I would say the difficulty says, difficult thing is for people to say, well, there's no money for this. And when you want to resolve at this point, when you want to resolve the creation of more jobs, this is strategic. You want to reduce poverty, and investment in this, again, is strategic. It's effective. We think that perfect is always the enemy of the possible. So if we think of a general law and a perfectly integrated system, blah, 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 but in the middle, when the discussion generates programs and regulations of things that didn't happen. For example, the childcare in the job places, for example, and each policy will not be perfect, but integrality has to look after everything and has to look after recognition, distribution, etc. And I don't want to take more time because I saw that there's 5 more time, but I think that those are the main lessons learned, and this should be discussed in economic terms. Selina, what would be your lessons learned or your recommendations were, rather than the lessons? I'd like to give a message, and that is we have to reconstruct and continue to strengthen our social weave from our countries, our confidence, and with a lot of respect, and consolidate the autonomy of all the participative society, the support of associations and organizations are to increase social capital, because that is going to help us develop development, welfare, and prosperity for everybody of our states, of our countries, so that we can all, between us, as we're doing now, to this is a demonstration of the commitment and responsibility we have as authorities and organizations, civil and public organizations, of having the responsibility of contributing to the development of our countries. With that sort of small contribution, which I said is to seek welfare. We are seeking welfare and prosperity for our families, and as Julio had said, women have this multiplier effect. And we always talk about not just the economic reinvestment that we make, what we receive from our families to our environment. Its multiplier effect is not just for our welfare, but the welfare of our community and therefore the economic development of the country. Francisco, I would like to underscore 3 lessons learned. One, the need to shield the processes that are started in an administration and should become policies of state and not necessarily the policies of a single administration. In the case of Costa Rica, we have tried to shield them through, by the way of law, by creating the system with a legal mandate in the case of childhood development and care, with a specific law that was made in April of 2014, and recently the law created in April 2022, and then use other strategies such as relating the targets of these public policies with other planning tools such as the national development plans or other multi-annual planning tools that will relate specific targets of our care policies to a more macro environment, and that would be the importance of building evidence-based public policies. And it's not just what do we want to do, but how much does it cost, how much does it cost not to have it, where do we find fiscal space. And there we constructed specific studies that allowed us to measure those items and have a closer conversation with people who are not in the daily activity of these issues, and to be able to discuss budgetary terms with the different parties. And the third element would be how do we design from, how do we make these progressive systems, is to say, to graduate the expectation from society, creating bridges and new modalities through experimental projects or pilot projects, that small-scale projects that will afford us much more evidence on how to extend coverage to different sectors of society. Well, thank you, Francisco. We're coming to an end. There was a question for Costa Rica that had to do with regard to what you mentioned about the milestones. What was the main milestone for the first year? We had, well, I cannot give you just one, but if I had to summarize this, it's the creation of regulations and technical instruments that allowed us to define the target population and the initial cost of a base care model with some specific. So we created a scale, we created specific rules and regulations, a set of technical tools that supported the further development of the system. Well, I thank you very much. Thank you all. And to close this roundtable, I would like to go back to what created this meeting, this plaza of social cohesion that has to do with continuing to think of care as an integrated system, a fourth pillar of social integration, a fourth pillar of welfare systems, always from a universal point of view of solidarity, of networking, of all organizations involved, having all human, material, and social and institutional sources to have them coordinated and to We have Nicolas here, and we want to mention Uruguay as one of the beacons in the country. And to close this, ratifying this, I would like to say that the agendas that traverse all public policies, if we look at them from the point of view of inequality, they have gender, they have age, and they have territory. And if we cannot close these care gaps, it's going to be very hard for us to impact on other inequalities. And inequalities is not my words, they are words that I've learned from many colleagues from our country or from Latin America. And I would like to rescue these issues that spur these type of meetings and that supports our work from the European Eurosocial program. Thank you, Virginia Tedeschi, and thank you for those who have accompanied her in this roundtable. And to continue, we also have present in this seminar virtually the Minister of Equality between Men and Women, Diversity and Equality of Opportunity from France, Elizabeth Moreno, who is going to share with us her thoughts that will supplement what we have been discussing this week about integral care systems. So let us listen to the video from Elizabeth Moreno.
Autoridades. Es un gusto poder participar en este evento, los cuidados como cuarto pilar de los sistemas.
It is a pleasure to participate in this event. I thank you for your invitation, and I'm very happy to continue with this collaboration with the Latin American countries after this meeting in Paris on the 4th of March, organized by the area of gender of Eurosocial Plus. The pandemic of COVID-19 has exacerbated in France and in all the continents the gender inequalities, but it has also evidenced non-remunerated work of women that was invisible and so essential. Women suffer for labor insecurity, inequalities in salary, and an unequal distribution of the care for children and people that depend on them. During lockdown, when men and women were equally locked down, 60% of domestic tasks or chores and the children needs fall on women and men. This burden should be stopped on women. It seems to be that the world has discovered that most of the tasks related to care are done by women, and they are not well paid and precarious. It is a reality. Non-remunerated work is an obstacle to development of women. Due to the chores of care, the lack of distribution of household chores, and unequal work distribution are a clear sample that stereotypes and inequalities in gender in care are still there, are still an obstacle in the lives of women. Work on care is a very important part of the agenda of gender equality. In this context, equality amongst men and women is one of the main concerns of the President of the French Republic, Macron, and this commitment in the long term is reflected in their actions. With the aim of improving the daily lives of women, their future, and move forward towards women and men equality, our government has implemented measures to achieve a more equal society. Based on my experience, I know that one of the obstacles for the professionalization of women is access to nurseries. And I don't speak about single-parent family. 85% of them are made up of a head of family being a woman, and many of them are below the lines of poverty. With my colleague, the government has reduced the cost of nurseries or child care for single women with children and has increased the subsidy of children care by 30%. Together with the local authorities, we are also intensifying the support of the creation of new nurseries or child care centers in vulnerable areas. In December 2021, our government published or enacted the law of a law reserving some child care areas for single-parent families so that they could find a job or start their own business. During and after the pandemics, our government has also increased salaries of people that are caregivers, which are our heroes of every day. This measure has a very positive impact on women because they are a majority in this sector. As you know, France occupies the presidency of the Council for the European Union, and we are working together with the rest of the member states and the representative for equality, Lena Gali, in order to move forward in gender equality. Mutual learning between Europe and Latin America is vital, and the Eurosocial Plus program is a unique tool in order to achieve equality. Equality is at our reach. Let's continue fighting to make it a reality in Europe, in Latin America, and in all the world. I wish you the best in your debate, and thank you very much once again for your invitation.
Agradecemos.
We thank the Minister of Women, Men Equality and Equal Opportunity and Gender Equality, Elizabeth Moreno, for accompanying us in this session. We will now continue with the next panel that will be moderated by Soledad Salvador. Soledad is economist, consultant for the Eurosocial program in topics of gender and care, a member of the interdisciplinary center CIEDUR, and she will moderate this panel. Well, good morning, good afternoon, rather. We are in the afternoon now. It is a pleasure. This activity here that was thought from Eurosocial, but many people are cooperating as well, is going to have a high impact, of course, because the region is thinking about these topics. And the topic of concern now, which is the last topic of this meeting, has to do with training of these people that are going to provide care and guarantee the quality of services. We used to speak about a trade-off between how to improve quality of services, but we want them to be affordable. And here is where we need to speak about finance and why the state is so important to make decisions about how to provide the service, when to provide it, and who should be involved. Because we will keep on having an informal market regarding care otherwise, and we want to generate better quality and more rights. So there is a trade-off here between how we can improve quality of services and make them affordable so that everybody can afford them and the market ceases to be informal. This is a structural characteristic.
Presentar a quienes van a dar
simply to introduce those who are going to give us better information than what I can give. We have Viviana Piñeiro. She is a graduate of political science in the University of Madrid. She has a postgraduate and specialized in care policies. She's Uruguayan, and she's an independent consultant and is an expert for Eurosocial. She has 15 years of experience in social policy, and she participated in the implementation of the early stages of the system of integrated care in Uruguay. Then we will listen to Anne-Caroline Postuma, who is the director of OIT's Force, which is devoted to vocational training through its network of member institutions in Latin America, the Caribbean, Spain, Portugal, and Cabo Verde. She has worked with ILO for more than 20 years in America and Argentina, and she is a doctorate by Sussex University. And then we will listen to Dr. Ernesto Villalba, who is in France, who works as an expert in the European Center for the Development of Education and Vocational Training, CEDEFOC, since 2011. He's responsible for the validation of non-formal and informal learning, and he has worked in different committees and work groups of OECD, UNESCO, and UU, and he is part of the editorial board of European Journal of Education. And as we're a bit late, we will ask the question which Viviana is going to make her presentation, is how to make progress in the professionalization of the caregiving sector, strengthening the process of profile identification, training, competency certification, and the coordination between them. I think, Viviana, you have the floor. Well, good afternoon. The lectern is a bit high for me. It is a pleasure to be here. Again, I thank Eurosocial for this opportunity and the Argentine Ministry of Foreign Affairs for allowing us to get together here. And I would like now to take fewer minutes than I have been given, is to present the progress of a study that we're doing in cooperation with Patricia Cosani on certification of job competencies in the caregiving in Latin America. And this has to do with what was discussed in the first panel with regard to the recognition of caregiving as a job. Yes. Okay, so this study, which I will briefly present, and then it will be available for you in greater detail. First is to try to characterize the Latin American region with regard to care and welfare, many of the aspects that were reflected this morning by Julio, characterizing the care and welfare systems vis-a-vis the pandemic, and also showing the great progress that is being made by most of the countries in the startup of caregiving policies. And as we said in the meeting today, the idea of thinking of caregiving from the five component point of view, not just of the services of care, we're going to say that certification of competencies is somehow a meeting point for the two of the five components, component of training and also component of regulations, everything that has to do with the regulations of services themselves in terms of quality standards, but also linked to the labor regulations, which has to do with the conditions of those people who have a remunerated job as caregivers. So the study is going to start from the background, the competency certification issues for the region are issues that where there are not much production, except for some work by ILO And then we have Gloria Redondo and Jimena Tonchas work on certification of job competencies in the region in general. And based on those, we are now going to focus on the caregiving sector, where we think there's less production now. And then what we'll try to do, based on the analysis of what is existing today, is to detect examples of good practices that are taking place in some countries, and somehow we will take the risk of proposing classification of the caregiving. Why do we make this proposal? To have a framework for analyzing what exists today, but also maybe to propose to countries a starting point from which to think of the development of job profiles in terms of care. Of course, we close with a series of challenges and recommendations which seek not just to continue consolidating this competency certification line, but also thinking of what Francisco said today, they think of the progressiveness of the construction of caregiving systems. And we thought, maybe we should think not necessarily of caregiving, fully consolidated caregiving systems, but we have to start to take steps in each one of those 5 components, and the construction of job profiles for caregiving would be a starting point, a good starting point. So, all right, what are we talking about when we talk about job competencies? We are talking about which are the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that are required to carry out a specific job, and to acquire those job competencies. There are different routes or different ways, and this will take us back to the 2 components of the caregiving systems that we mentioned before, which are training and regulation. To acquire job competencies, we will have to find 2 main roads. One is the more traditional one, which is training and education. It can be formal education within the framework of formal education in countries, but it can also be a part of the training strategies that we may start to develop specifically for the caregiving sector, with training courses for caring to dependents, or caring of children, or caring of the elderly. And we want to bring about the idea that there's not necessarily a need to create courses from scratch, but also there could be a validation of the knowledge that people bring with them. And then we have aspects that has to do with continuous education, etc. But in the study, we're going to focus on the other pathway to acquire job competencies that has to do with experience. And based on what we have discussed today, that has to do with how we people and how we women take care of others. This route is not just a way of improving the quality of of the care that is given, but also improve the work and formation track of people who are caregivers. So in the meeting point of regulation and training, we will have job competencies, and this will lead us to the fact that, and when we speak about care policies, and when we recognize and redistribute caregiving tasks, when we speak about competence certification, we can contribute the scheme of the 5R to the 5R scheme from ILO, trying to recognize and compensate the people who work in caregiving, and for them to have representation. And this has to do with training and certification, empowering of those people to be part of those processes. So to have an idea of what are these processes, we have advances that are very heterogeneous in the region, with more or less consolidated certification systems. But in all cases, there are two principal processes. One is focused on identifying the competencies that we will require to perform our task in particular. And on the other hand, there's a process of evaluation in people of what are the competencies that they have acquired, and if necessary, generate a plan to complete the missing competencies in the framework of occupational profile or a job profile, and hopefully as well educational actions that will help us develop the competencies to complete both processes. So what are the advantages that we can identify in the incorporation of the certification of job competencies in care? Firstly, it contributes visibilization and valorization of caregiving tasks which was up to now given without training, without certification, with a lot of work. Hard work, again, not paid, but or sometimes even paid for. And then secondly, it contributes to the professionalization of that work that is nowadays done, and helps certify those who carry it out so as to contribute to their job history, and it has the potential of contributing to the improvement of the quality of the services, because this will be linked to some service quality standards, and therefore that has an influence on the care that is received. And they can also contribute to the development of the caregiving sector, which is also posed today as a motor or as a driving force in the economy. So earlier on, I said that we proposed in the study the analysis of the job profiles existing today. So we classified the caregiving services in different dimensions. So firstly, the target population to which these services are defined. Firstly, the be them children, elderly or disabled. They've divided the services into the type of care, home care, institutional care, but only day care, residential or permanent care, and remote care through the use of new technologies. And there's also distinction related to whether we speak about direct or indirect care. You know that there are a series of professions and jobs that make care possible, and that's where we're going to find certain profiles that carry out those jobs. And then we have transversal profiles which could apply to different target populations and models of care. So this proposal will generate framework for the analysis of what is existent, but it could also be a proposal for the baseline of what is required to be developed. We're not going to go into the country-by-country analysis, but I want to show you the schematic for the analysis for the objective or the target populations linked to dependence and childhood. And here we can distinguish for each population what is the care model that we're analyzing: home care, daycare, residential care, etc. And for each type of care, we identified the profiles that are most seen in the frameworks already developed in the region, but we also, with the ones that we also consider that is desirable to continue developing in the future, mainly for everything that has to do with direct care, but also for some indirect care. With that classification, we got to the analysis of the experiences in Latin America and the Caribbean. Here, for lack of space and time, we selected some countries. In part, the initial selection had to do with the progress that had already been made by Eurosocial, analyzing the competency certification systems in the Pacific Alliance countries, but we wanted to also include Ecuador because we considered that it has made interesting progress, that it was good to incorporate in the comparison. And the case of Uruguay, which, as we said today, is the country that has made the most progress in the implementation of an integrated care system, and yet the the progress made by the country in the competence certification is small. So what we want to show with regard to progressiveness and progress, the certification of job competencies in care can be independent from the progress and the consolidation of caregiving systems, because there's already a system, because we already have people there to advance in the design of the occupational profiles in the specific occupations. It's also very important. But it's also mentioned in the study, and it's important for Uruguay because they have only one profile, has to do with the curriculum and the training, development of training.
This analysis resulted in these summaries I'm going to show you briefly here. We try to identify for each country how many occupational profiles were developed. In the full study you will be able to see specifically which profiles they are, but we wanted to see, based on the classification suggested, how many occupational profiles had been developed for each target population and model of care. And this led us to some findings, for example, that the distribution of profiles amongst the target populations is quite homogeneous, but in care model there are profiles related to diurnal care and not so much to other types of care. This led us to this table, which is very important in the sense that not only did we analyze what I was showing you here of the different profiles linked to the target populations and the profiles linked to the type of care, but identify per country the main loopholes and challenges in the development of profiles. I have no time for developing this now, but we look into the European experience where we analyze especially two instruments that are complementary. One of identification of skills and competencies, and a framework that turns these competencies and skills amongst countries seeking mobility, that this idea appears in Pacific Alliance study as well. And the study will contain examples of countries that will be analyzed deeply in order to seek new and better practices. The study presents the four main obstacles identified in the region, one having to do with loopholes in certified profiles and the training today in care, with inadequate articulation between the different sectors of healthcare and social protection. Care is socio-educational, so profiles should be thought out based on this. Aspects related to finance to ensure access to certification of people that cannot pay for that. And as I said before, the diversity in the supply of training and certification. The study closes with recommendations, basically to strengthen institutionality and governance of systems based in social dialogue, to prioritize and listen to the voices of people working in healthcare, educational models, to think about specific profiles of care. Something else about the importance of dealing or providing care to immigrants, because this may impact on consequences related to the global chains of care. to consider the care system as a system in expansion with potential to offer jobs, include people that are most vulnerable, and in spite of the fact that progress is heterogeneous and scarce, there are things in the region. We have made progress in care. Therefore, think about strategies for monitor and assessment to disseminate the best practices. Therefore, what we hope is that this study that you will be having access to will contribute to keep on developing certification of competencies and skills and development of occupational profiles in care. But think that this progress may be grain of sand in order to keep on expanding on care systems for the regions. Thank you, Viviana. We give the floor to Anne-Caroline now for the comments. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. And in the first place, I would like to thank you for the invitation to be here participating at this meeting, at this space, together with the people that accompany us virtually and in presence. I want to congratulate the organizers of Eurosocial, etc., for having taken the initiative of expanding on this subject and providing tools in order to develop strategies of certification of labor skills in care professions. But particularly, I would like to congratulate the author, Viviana Piñeiro and Patricia Cosane, for having created a document which is very innovative. We have moved forward in this debate. At the same time, it's very rigorous and holistic in its approach, but also providing suggestions in practical terms on how to move forward with the certification of skills in this region, in this sector, which is heterogeneous, the sector of care. It has been clearly presented as well, very clear presentation. And we have to think about how to communicate this agenda and foster debate in terms of public policies in care. My comments are the following. I want to highlight some dimensions which I consider important about this study and its implications. The first one I would like to point out is that this is a significant development regarding the processes of certification and the components of training and regulation. And this in the context of present debate in this field of economy of care, the development of policies in this regards for our region is very important. The work of identifying how to implement this classification of competencies in the countries examined for the sector of care is very important. We need to insist on the strategic need of betting on the development of this fourth pillar of well-being or welfare regimes, together with the pillars of education, social security, and safety. And these processes are converging, they converge, and this strengthens the complementary nature between care, education, and social security. On the other hand, I believe it is important, as was said before, to consider the context and demographic transition that our region is going through, and that increases the demand for care, but also the impacts of the pandemics. And this could be considered as being a turning point. what we've been through with this sanitary crisis may cause more awareness about the importance of healthcare protection and care systems. Considering all this in context, it is the moment to foster discussions on certification about the competencies and skills in healthcare professionals and training as a topic which is a challenge, that of acknowledging learning previously about this sector, which is sometimes very informal and precarious, how to acknowledge this sector. This should be communicable and applicable, and it allows us to make decisions. And these policies of care are very important in general, with this focus on the certification of labor skills process. A good news in all this context is regarding this topic, there is this issue of certification of competencies in our region, and they count with the story of many experiences from ILO. We have this bank of labor competencies or skills that were consulted to draft the documents. So another good news is that through our institutions network, professional training, and ministries of work, education, we have this network and this community that may help absorb knowledge and see how to move forwards with this. With this, as was mentioned as well in the study, the different instructions and the data consulted from the text, they are members of Central for ILO. So we have a natural alliance through this database that we have in common. So the construction of labor skill certification focused on care has a wide basis of experience for it to be developed, and different channels established through the network and other alliances to provide cooperation and sustainability. And to finish and conclude, after having read this text and participated in these 2 days of discussions experience, I think it's very important on our side to see how to contribute with technical support and assistance in order to continue developing on this area. Thank you, Anne Caroline. Thank you. We give the floor to Ernesto Villalba. Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here with you, everybody. It is a pity that I haven't been able to fly to Argentina. I would have loved to go. I want to rehash the importance of the work being done in terms of the care sector, what is being done by Eurosocial, and I would like to congratulate Viviana and colleagues for the report. I am very happy, and I would be very happy to read it. The presentation has been very clear about its importance as a sector of care and the certification of the different skills, which is a key element. I believe in Europe we have seen already with COVID that we need a sector of care of good quality, and we are working for that to happen. And especially the professionalization of the sector is important. And here I believe, and it was indicated as well by the previous speakers that there is a lot of importance in human factor quality. Professionals that are doing this job should be well qualified and prepared for it. Unfortunately, this is a sector where there is a lot of informal work, precarious work, and I believe once again the accreditation of competencies is a key element and fundamental.
One of the most interesting aspects, I think, and that's why I'm so happy to be here, is precisely that I normally speak from the outlook of accreditation. But here we're looking at this from the point of view of the sector itself, what's important for the sector itself, and how accreditation can help this sector develop and improve professionalization. I think that it's important that we should understand the place of accreditation as an articulating element for all other elements and services, that it is important that they should be consistent and speak and work in unison to improve these services. So I want to point out three important elements. Two, I think, have already been covered by Viviana, such as the framework of qualifications and competencies in Europe. As many of you already know, the European qualification framework has been considered, very important in the development of validation or of a non-formal or informal knowledge, and it's been important to create the systems and consolidate them, and to build bridges between the different sectors and contexts in which these certifications take place. So in that sense, I think that the development of qualification frameworks, I think that's also taking place in Latin America, is important to develop the system. I think that we have underscored from my area many times that qualification frameworks are not absolutely necessary to develop accreditation systems, but they do help, and they help in the development of the profiles and the competencies that are necessary, in particular what we call the learning outcomes that are necessary in those competencies and those qualifications. So this is an element that I think should be developed, and that, as I say, can help in certification. The other one is that though these frameworks and the exchange of competencies and the development of competencies have to collaborate closely with the training systems and vocational systems, so learning, lifetime learning, the existence of flexible training systems that are capable of having professionals that come in and out of the vocational training systems in Europe is one of the hot subjects, the micro-credentials that will allow for the flexibilization of sectors and training, and all this with the accreditation of competencies that will help make this more specific for individuals and clearer for the person that has to be trained. In the case caregivers. And the last element that I wanted to mention that I think is very, very important are services and the policies for vocational training and outreach of to the people that need these qualifications. I think that in the care sector, which is again is a sector that is informal in many cases, where there is lack of formality and professionalization, it is important to try to bring in these people that maybe have been caregivers for many people without qualifications, or within precarious jobs, or many times with members of their own family that are giving care, and companies that have been learned that there's a lot of learning that have to be formalized and certified. And again, companies accreditation is fundamental for this. And to reach those people, it's important to have vocational guidance and capacity development, and therefore NGOs and civil society organizations are important, and their participation is important. So from my outlook, from what little has been seen of what has been done and it's being debated here, unfortunately, I think that giving importance to the caregiving sector and also give it a global and strategic vision, and for them to have different aspects of work coordinated with consistency. So I think it's essential to create quality processes, and I think certification is one of the elements that should be taken into account in that context. Thank you.
Ernesto.
Por ahora.
Okay. Looks like we've got one final round for 5 minutes. I wanted to pose some challenges to the three of you because we haven't got any questions yet. But thinking of what Viviana was saying today about migrant population, maybe this would add on to the house workers and the different forms of formalization and regulations in Latin America. We know that it's highly informal work, how between, apart from the articulation with the different sectors, how do we articulate with the different professions that go to give care to homes and to residences and to child care and direct care that have also to be coordinated and articulated. And this made me think that it was, apart from training and regulation, and to make sure that regulations are complied with, you have to be checked. And one of the problems that started in Uruguay, for example, came up as that there was lack of fiscalization, of lack of control. Fiscalization was not contemplated because we know that caregiving has a problem that take care of vulnerable people, be them children or elderly or elders, and very hardly do they get any reports on people who take care of their own relatives and things like that. How do you coordinate all this to make to go towards a horizon that is less disrupted, so as not to generate more conflict with all the parties? I think this question is difficult and stimulating for the future. How is not to create more problems by professionalizing part of the profession of the caregiving. We didn't go into this, but in the classification we incorporated domestic workers in the classification because in countries of the regions in successive and progressive advances, first early advances in care and in some places had to do with attempts to regulate domestic workers, in spite of the fact that in Uruguay, when we discussed with the sector that is more regulated now, with the law for domestic workers, with the union for domestic workers, when we debated with them as part of the policy, they tried to establish limits as to what are the functions of domestic work and what are the functions of care. But the truth is that most of the remunerated work that is carried out in Latin American homes in our region, there is a very large incidence vis-a-vis other regions in the world of remunerated domestic work. Those domestic workers, as they develop other activities, they're also taken care of. So it would be to really blindfold us if we thought that to certify companies of cares, it would be a good practice to ensure that that care is carried out under the umbrella of domestic work, should incorporate some certification to ensure that companies for that job do exist. And secondly, in that framework, I think that the phenomenon of migration internal migration in the region is very important and should be taken into account in this enormous tool. But as you will see in the study, one of the main challenges that were identified had to do with financing, and not all times when the possibilities of certifying competencies exist, that certification has a public financing. So if there is a possibility that can be accessed by paying out of their own pockets, and then we have to find ways of getting a public policy to ensure weak population sectors such as the migrant sectors to have access to this process. And finally, what Soledad mentioned about the long-term sites and permanent caregiving of elderly is a good example of that. In Uruguay, we try to create a new regulation that defines certain quality standards for those caregiving, long-term care sites, and it entailed that people were specifically trained for caring of dependents, and for them centers to operate, they had to have the personnel established. And so we had mostly people that did not have that training, and the state then finance the competency certification processes so that those people who used to work without training and or certification could take the step. The care center could advance and meet all the quality standards that were required, and therefore be authorized to operate. These are slow processes, but as I said, in the articulation of the components of caregiving policies, we can make small steps and advance in small steps. Well, I think I have three main points. The certification of work competencies in the caregiving sector is very powerful and innovative. Amongst other aspects, it contributes to increase the visibility and the appreciation of the caregiving work, which has a sort of aspect that has to be naturally assigned to women, and lack of valorization of domestic workers, for example, who increase and make this visibility appreciation of the work, and that helps to a better organization of the sector, and that gives better labor rights. Secondly, I think that by strengthening the training of caregivers, you strengthen their employability, and it's another factor that goes towards the formalization of workers in that sector, and can therefore improve the quality of their participation in the job market, and also improving coordination and formalization, but also improving the working conditions and their income as well as a result. And finally, as another result, there is an improvement of their own contribution to care. And we know from studies that the people who work in many times in the caregiving sector have little time to care for the people. They earn little, they run from one place to the other. So this is another way of valuing what is done and improving their contribution to care in that sector. Thank you. Okay, Ernesto, would you like to make a contribution? Well, I think everything has more or less been said, and I agree with what Viviana has said. And just to add,
accreditation is going to help strengthen the formalization of the sector, formal labor. I would also like to add that this is a very important tool for two things. One is individualization of training. It may be more individualized and personalized first, and therefore it will be easier for people to get trained, to qualify better, and it will give it more visibility, more quality, Therefore, I believe that in this sense, this process of accreditation as a tool for personalization and individualization of training is key. And in this sense as well, I believe it's very important what is being done about mobility through or inter-region and in a country and amongst countries, and the work of Eurosocial in this sense. The Pacific Alliance is very important in trying to create systems that be compatible. In Europe, for example, this is one of our pillars, basically, mobility of people. Therefore, in this sense, these systems of certification of competencies should have some status and be assigned this value to these capabilities or skills. So these elements to add to what has been said, of course. Thank you. We will close the panel because we don't have more time left. So we thank everybody for the participation, and we will go to the next panel. Thank you, and a round of applause. Not interfere in this dialogue, even though I wanted to. I would like to thank Soledad Salvador and those who have accompanied her in the last panel of this seminar, but we still have many things to share with you. We are going to go to a very important moment where we want to share some conclusions, some thoughts, final thoughts, and for Francesco Maria Chiovi, Coordinator of Public Policies of Eurosocial Program that has been in the organization of these events. Unfortunately, for health reasons, he hasn't been able to be here in Buenos Aires, so I will give the floor to Francesco so that he can share some thoughts and conclusions of the morning. Thank you very much, Jimena, and good morning, everybody. I'm being connected from Rome here. It's 7 in the afternoon, so physically here, but I'm very present at the San Martin Palace building. A very good discussion. Evidently, this is a very good audience. I would like to add something. I believe it's a good moment in the sense that care is in the agenda. There is a lot of consensus, of course, and this depends on what you have stated or underscored. Different movements, feminist movement, gender equality agenda, the rights of people to receiving care, the pandemics, that has made the importance of care more visible. There are other elements that are favoring all this, the fact of care being in the agenda. And these elements, I want to point them out because it has to do with the whole initiative of Eurosocial, linked to how social policies need to be positioned vis-à-vis the global transitions that are affecting us. And these other elements have to do with how we conceive work. I believe that the condition of women related to household chores was loathsome because it didn't leave women any other alternative. Women needed to devote themselves to household chores and care-related tasks. But there was a second reason. Her work used to be considered as second category or not as productive as men's work. As you know, there is a very famous book that associates this lack of visibility of women's work to the Marxist vision of work. Marxist vision developed with capitalism, which is the one that controls, is that which considers a productive activity associated to other productive factors and considers productive work as a value that stems from exchangeability with other assets. We work to produce assets which are sold in the market at a value that incorporates part of this value necessary as an input to produce it. As of this conception of productive work, Marx considered unproductive work as parasite related, and this goes hand in hand with the development of capitalism in our country and has been accepted by the labor rights. But something is changing now, and this is not new. We've been 20 or 30 years with a transition towards a new concept of work that allows for a revaluing of work. On the first hand, productive work is losing relevance. We used to work 24 hours a day, or almost. Today, there are some other dimensions with a high social assessment or valuing. Work lost the priority it used to have in our recent history, but it has changed family. We should remember this. We don't have anymore the family with many children, with the woman dealing with the everyday aspects. This idea of family that was the basis for the creation of our system of social protection or social well-being. And therefore, it was developed by protecting the work of the worker and the risks associated to work, leaving women to deal with some other needs that were not considered in the state or by the state. But there is a third factor. In addition to the loss of relevance of work, the change of the family paradigm or pattern, there is another factor that explains another conception of work, which is the change of the productive structure. Manufacturing industry is not that important as it was during the 20th century. The heart of economy has gone towards the area of services, where emotional values acquire importance. They are not measurable. So this is leading us as humanity to breaking of this dichotomy, productive work and work that was considered within the sexual division of work. Today, societies value more work alien to the manufacturing industry, work that do not concern the manufacturing of goods, but generate value, services, generate and create assets to value the environment. Within this framework, I believe, in addition to the feminist fight, in addition to the acknowledgement of rights, care are achieving better status, more dignity and legitimacy. This is why we start discussing. This is a present discussion in our societies on how to deal with the problem of no remuneration and lack of protection for the caregivers. It used to be that we didn't imagine all this, where today we discuss it. And the discussion about the future of care related to the discussion about basic income or the detachment of social status from occupational status. All this is easily connected and naturally connected with care, which is more limited a conception of care as care for people that have a certain level of dependence for them to lead a dignified life, autonomous life. And this that I tried to summarize says that if care cannot be left in the hands of the women or the family as if it were in productive, private, informal activities and organized according to the possibilities of each of us, then care should be developed under the vision of professional services. Services implemented by specialized people. And this is why in this seminar we speak about care as fourth pillar of the system of social welfare or well-being. Services of care may be and may acquire stability and more dignity and professionalism and develop them as other pillars of social well-being like health, education, etc. To summarize, I believe the moment is favorable. Care are in the agenda. Today's seminar once again allows us to focus on achievements, progress, and future steps to develop the care system. In order to close, I hope this seminar has rehashed the idea of care in a Latin American network, a network of institutions, a network of cooperation. I believe we need from one another, and we want to continue with this topic because it has not been solved yet. And the road to travel is very long, not only in Latin America, but also in Europe, and therefore I call upon Europe and Latin America, and I will conclude with this moment of closing of the seminar to give the floor to the institutional representative who is going to formally close the seminar. Thank you.
Agradecemos.
We thank these comments shared with us by Francesco Maria Chiodi, and as he has said, we are now going to proceed to the institutional closure of this meeting. I would like to invite to share some final words, Luca Pierantoni. He is the head of the cooperation section of the European Union in Argentina. Luca, please. Thank you. I will be very brief. Simply, I would like to express my gratitude. It's been a long way on the Eurosocial work, and many agencies have been involved in this work, and I am moved to at this closure because it has been an intense work at difficult times. We were hit by the COVID crisis in 2020, and this forced us to rethink the way in which we work. And this happened in particular in the Eurosocial program, because this Eurosocial program was one that gave the most tools to try to offered the most tools to try to face up to a new crisis of which we didn't know the direction. So it has been a very useful program, extremely flexible, which has allowed us to carry out particularly useful work in a very dramatic context. And I think that at a time like today, it is necessary that we acknowledge this. And the Eurosocial program is a program that dates back quite a few years and has benefited from several times that gave it the possibility of reinventing itself, reformulating itself, and restructuring itself. And I think that in Argentina, during this final phase, we have also made a contribution towards the improvement of the structure of the program itself, because we launched in 2020 a country table which was trying to systematize the work that was being done with the different agencies, but it also represented something else, which was because it pushed the program very far. It generated many ideas thanks to the expanded exchange with various participants, and therefore it improved the content itself of the program. Initially, we had some doubts. We thought that maybe this would overload or over-bureaucratize the consulting process, and this was not the case. On the contrary, it gave a strong push to the program. So I think that looking back, we should underscore these two moments, a moment of rethinking of the program structure, and a time when the program showed it was capable of offering the necessary flexibility to achieve a task and meet a challenge that nobody expected, which was the pandemic. The question is clearly, up to what extent is it possible to improve the program even more in the future? This program will have a future. I do not deal with it in particular, but there's no doubt that we will see a Eurosocial plus in the future at some point. It is possible to improve it. Yes, in the last few months, I think that the colleagues from the Argentine counterpart, we have asked this question. I am convinced that Eurosocial could have looked more into the federal aspect and the local authorities, especially in countries like Argentina, where the institutional distribution itself of the country means that the provinces play a very important role in sustainable development and social policies. Some of this has been done, but I think it's an area for improvement. Another aspect that we have to consider is the strategic communication. Eurosocial is not a program that speaks too many times to the citizenry. We have not opened a public debate on these subjects. It's a technical assistance program, which is many times limited to experts and public officials. So the question is, would it be possible in the future to imagine times of disseminating a bit more of some of the issues or some of the work that we're doing? I think that this is possible. Those are ideas when it is fundamentally a working program, a program that works. It worked very well. So I think that the most important thing is to preserve it, not reinvent it too much, because as in soccer, no, the winning team should not be changed. And when you speak about a team, I would say that the implementation team, and I would like to close by saying that the main reason I asked to be here today was to try to recognize that the implementing team for the Eurosocial program has made a major effort in the last few years, in particular in Argentina, the colleagues from social policies. I think that the fact that Francesco Chiodi was not able to be here in Argentina is unfair, because he deserved to be with us. I know that Virginia took the floor this morning, and she did an extraordinary job. And I would also like to thank the cooperation from the colleagues of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, Juan Ignacio Rocataliata, Maria Laura Pagliotico, and all the people who were involved in this. When we look at this retrospectively, I think that over the years, more than 30 actions have been from Eurosocial have been started up, 17 of which in the last round with the Diálogo País and the COVID table that continued in September. So you can imagine the number of experts, of activities, of exchanges that we have had. And all this has been possible thanks to the individual effort of many colleagues who have worked very hard during these months and years, and on behalf of the European Union and the organization, we deeply thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.
Agradecemos las palabras de Luca Pierantoni.
We thank Luca Pierantoni for his words, and from now I would like to give the floor to Sabina Federic, responsible for the Argentine Agency of International Cooperation, Humanitarian Assistance, and Cascos Blancos and White Helmets. Good afternoon. It has been a pleasure to share this meeting with so many authorities and specialists from the region and from other countries who have attested to the progress that has been made in this matter in Argentina, in the region, and in other countries with whom we share the need to make progress on this fourth pillar of the welfare regimen, which is our system, which is the care system. I think that the meeting that closes this first stage of debate, where scientific knowledge is combined with the social policy advances, and as has been said, the impulse of the feminist movement to recognize all this work line, which used to be invisibilized and not remunerated. So I congratulate you on the themes and on the progress that has been made up to now. And in this framework, I would like to underscore the work done by the Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity to support the installation of an integral care system in Argentina, in coordination with the interministerial table or panel for these policies. And I would like to underscore the importance given by government to create this ministry, which has led in this matter, which was visibilized during the pandemic, but was already included in the agenda for the creation of the ministry, and a lot of work has been done to make progress. And I would also like to thank the colleagues from the European Union delegation and the Eurosocial program colleagues for the joint work that has made it possible to carry out quality initiatives with such a positive impact on social. And I would also like to announce the creation of the Argentine Agency of International Cooperation and Humanitarian Help, Cascos Blancos, a decision that has been made by our Foreign Minister, Santiago Cafiero. From this new role as the head of this agency, I am hoping to contribute to increase the impact that can be had on development to palliate the social and economic effects of the pandemic, particularly structural problems that Argentina and the region have, and with which Argentina can cooperate worldwide. We have strategic allies in this, like the European Union, with whom our country has a long history of cooperation. For Argentina, international cooperation is a true state policy, and this year we are going to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the creation of the International Cooperation Fund of Argentina, which is contributed to by national institutions, ministries, institutions, CONICET, which provide expertise to other countries of Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Australia, Oceania, with an average of 130 projects a year for the last decade. So the current situation makes us face many challenges, complex challenges, and it is essential to build and consolidate alliances that will help us find possible solutions to face up to those difficulties, as I said, notably compounded by the pandemic. These alliances with our cooperation partners have allowed us to obtain valuable results for the well-being of our population, and this is what, from our agency, we wish to promote and foster. We know that we have the active participation of national institutions that we work with every day in coordination and articulation to seek to increase the impact of strategic national policies through international cooperation. Our experience in South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation shows us that formation of a space where different countries can integrate and contribute their experiences and capabilities in a process of mutual learning and shared results is not only an extremely enriching experience, but also a drive for the promotion of development. Many of our public institutions have worked in Eurosocial the Eurosocial program for many years with very good results in terms of strengthening of capabilities and exchanges with the region and Europe. And with this objective, we have also taken advantage of the platform that Eurosocial offers, such as the transversalization of the gender approach in policies for children and adolescents, the professionalization of the access of children and adolescents to technology, and a survey on gender violence, amongst other subjects. And I want to finalize by underscoring that the current scenario makes it evident that it's essential to consolidate international cooperation, strengthen it with different challenges, and incorporate new actors and participants, and this requires the coordinated effort of all those who participate in international cooperation, with the ultimate objective to be able to respond to the particular challenges of each country and of the region, thereby avoiding the exclusion of some countries from the access to cooperation tools. Thank you.
We thank Sabrina Frederick for her words, in charge of the International Agency, Humanitarian Help Agency, and White Helmets. And with this last intervention, we want to, on behalf of the Eurosocial Program and the Interdisciplinary Center of Public Policies, University Abel Furtado from Chile, to thank everybody who has accompanied us here and those who have been connected over the digital platforms of Eurosocial and UH Digital TV. It has been a very interesting session, of course. We always want more because all these topics would require a whole day in order to deal with them deeply and give them the importance they have. But we have planted a seed here, and we hope we can continue with the dialogues and future meetings. Let me remind you that this meeting will be posted on the website plazasocial.eu. Visit it not only to listen again to this seminar, to Santiago's seminar as well 2 days ago, but connect with the San Jose de Costa Rica seminar on the 26th, where we will talk about the transformations in the labor market. For you to listen to the interviews with experts, our digital libraries, and other resources that will be available to you. about the 3 themes dealt with here through innovation and social cohesion. Let me tell you as well that once this seminar is over, we are going to develop, as we did in Santiago, a space for dialogue that will be posted in our platform. We are going to talk with players that participate in care sectors, not only with technicians and experts, but we wanted to listen to the experiences of people that participate in care organizations every day. This is a differentiating factor that we wanted to highlight here. We thank you all and we invite you to lunch now outside the room where you had coffee. We thank the technical teams. We thank everybody at this seminar. We thank the team of Eurosocial and the university team in the organization and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.